So hello everyone. My notification here is showing that we are live on Facebook. I want to welcome you to this very important live cast that we are doing today featuring my student, my friend, and my teacher, Dr. Kellie Kirksey. So I met Dr. Kellie several years ago when she started taking some courses that I organized and that I offered yet. And Kellie is also an expressive arts therapist. She completed our program. And I will say this, and just about anybody I've talked to in our community will say how much they have been impacted by Kellie's wisdom. And I can think of no better person to have on for this conversation than Kellie. And Kellie, I believe you're going to lead us in a little bit of centering to start. Yes?
Mm-hmm. Yes. First, I want to just say thank you for reaching out to me during this time when everything is on fire and so raw, that your communication from your heart to my heart made a world of difference. So thank you for your sensitivity. Yeah, so I appreciate you. I want to thank everybody that's out there listening, and we'll take a moment to bring ourselves really present for this conversation, for this heart connection. So if your feet can touch the floor where you are, allow yourself to just bring your attention to your feet, to your foundation, to that part of you which helps you to stand and move forward in life. Let yourself feel the energy in the four corners of your right foot and the four corners of your left foot. Feeling that energy of being grounded, of being present, of being connected to the earth in a way that when the wind blows, when the storm comes, when the hurricane rolls in, that you remain rooted, feeling yourself so grounded in the midst of the storm that we are in, moving and swaying, and you are still rooted and grounded, bending in ways that feel uncomfortable, yet we remain rooted and grounded. Take a deep breath in, and whatever way that feels good, bring that air into your body and let it go. And again, getting you to take another breath, taking in that life force energy, that breath that gives us life. Inhaling it, feeling it, and letting it go when it feels right, breathing it out. And now, if it feels comfortable for you, to bring your hands to your heart center. Perhaps you want to bring palm to palm, or perhaps you want to rest your hands on your heart. Resting your hands wherever your hands are telling you they want to be, and bowing down to your courageous heart. I am courageous enough to engage in conversations that bring discomfort, but that bring healing. My courageous heart allows me to go further in life than I ever thought I could. My beautiful, courageous heart allows me to show up and speak up and stand up for those that are voiceless and for myself. I bow to my courageous heart. Take another deep breath in, resting your hands down to wherever they feel comfortable, exhaling, and blinking your eyes open, coming back into a state of even greater presence. So I started to feel a little emotional right there. And in the midst of all of this, cities on fire, I go through my days with tears right at the rim of my eyes. That is there. So when Dr. Marich asked me, did I have anything I wanted to share when she offered this platform, I said yes. To be able to have a real conversation about what this feels like right now, because it feels like an excruciating grieving that George Floyd is my brother, my cousin, my neighbor, my husband, my son. And to be yet another Black man murdered, and it taking 4 days for an arrest to be made when we all witnessed it. We all witnessed it. So for me, it was another reminder of we live in two different Americas. We live in two different Americas. And that's a difficult line to walk. So in the America that I live in, and I'm going to speak for myself and my feelings, in the America that I live in, when I get in my car and there happens to be a police officer behind me, automatically, I'm afraid. Automatically, my heart rate increases, cortisol starts flooding through my body, and I am feeling a terror inside that will I be stopped? Will I be assaulted? Will I be killed? So that's the America that I live in. The America that I live in has a dinner table and a family of mine that we sit together and we talk about how to stay alive, how to stay safe. Not just my Black son, but my Black daughters, who growing up, and even now, we have conversations about how do you respond when someone calls you the N-word, when you're just in school trying to get an education? How do you respond when someone says, oh, you got a full ride to Penn State? Must be affirmative action. What about skills? What about knowledge? So we live in two different Americas. There were 4 cops involved in the George Floyd murder. One with his knee on his neck, choking the life out of him as he pleaded and said, I can't breathe. I can't breathe. Asking for his mother, his deceased mother, and 2 officers on his back and 1 standing. Now, where are those 3 officers now? They're at home, okay? They're probably eating a sandwich, might be having a cup of coffee, watching TV. They're at home. Now, flip side, if those officers had have looked like me in this other America, I would have been under the jail. Under the jail. There was an incident where there was a young man who was 17 years old. He was in a car, went to a store with his friends. His friends got out. They did rob the store. That little boy did not know that his friends were going to rob the store. Guess how many years he got in prison? 100. 100. We live in two different Americas, and it's excruciating. It's exhausting. It's exhausting. It is almost beyond words, that feeling of I'm not safe in this world that I live in. And I want you all to breathe. Don't shock out on me. I want you to breathe. I want you to hear me. Because these are the things that I don't talk about when I'm with you. We're dancing, we're drumming, we're meditating, we're doing our yoga. It's time to take all of that off the mat. Mm-hmm. We have to take our yoga off the mat. We have to let our drumming become our voice, our indignation of what is happening. And that means working to change policies. We can't continue to exist in two different Americas. I look at what is happening and I march. I make my signs. I protest. I've taught my kids. My kids have been protesting forever. They're like, again, Mom? Yeah. So now they're the ones. Yeah, my daughter, she's wonderful. She's my little techie. And the cyber protest that she's mounting is so powerful. She says, dear white friends of mine, use your power, put your money where your mouth is. Help contribute to Black Lives Matters, she says. She says, use your art to express the rage that people of color, Black and brown people, are feeling. So she uses that technology, she uses that gift, make a difference. And what we are working to do is have a true call to action. Right. A true call to action. Like, what are we going to do outside of our comfortable normal? Yeah. Because you know me, I could dance and sing and chant and bliss out all day long. But if I am not contributing to policy change, then that means I'm comfortable living in two separate Americas where we continue to be murdered. Mm-hmm. Because the truth is, when you can't even go into a church and feel safe. I mean, I don't know if you all remember the 9 people that were murdered by the young white man that sat in Bible study with them and then killed them all. And then the police officers picked him up. Now, Black man would have just been decimated. They would have blew him up, okay? So they picked him, put him in the patrol car, and then took him to Burger King because he was hungry. He was hungry. They took him to Burger King after he murdered 9 Black people. So where is the value? So in the Constitution, we're 3/5 of a person. Do you see my humanity? Do you see my whole person? Or do you see me as 3/5 of a person? And you're more outraged because Target got looted than you are about the brown and Black bodies that are never coming back. I am angry. I am sad. This is real talk. This is real talk. I am inflamed. I am physically inflamed. Cortisol going wild. Yeah. Broke out. Stress, anxiety, trauma, being Black in America. That's always underneath the surface. So you might see your Black and brown friends. smiling and feeling good. But how can you feel whole when people that look like you are being murdered? And nobody is saying, let's change some policy, let's have some protections, let's change how police officers are trained. Let's say that if you have 2 to 3 violations of excess force, you're off the force, as opposed to this person that killed George Floyd. He had 18 prior offenses of excess force. What does it take? What does it take? So I want to issue a call of action to everyone under the sound of my voice. If you can hear me speaking, ask yourself, are you ready to be uncomfortable for change? Because if we're doing nothing, then we're complicit in what has been happening since the country was built by people that look like me.
Yeah.
400 years ago. So if we aren't doing something, then we are benefiting from these institutional systems that keep Black and brown people oppressed. And I've heard many people say, well, I'm not racist. Well, racism is about power. It's a power dynamic. And when you can use your power to disenfranchise someone, that's racism. That's racism when we abuse our power and privilege as human beings. As human beings, what is your humanity calling you to do differently? We're in the midst of a pandemic. People have been inside. People have had feelings of their rights stripped from them. Oh, you want me to wear a mask? Oh, you want me to stay in the house? Oh, hell no. I'm gonna go protest. Don't tell me don't go outside. Yeah. Okay. That's a privilege too, isn't it? Because you can. So there's that pandemic, there's that. And all that came and is coming with that trauma, that people are anxious, people are angry, people are frustrated. And then the murder of George Floyd. Yeah. So the virus of corona has been new on the scene. The virus of racism has been around for 400 years. And we have to work diligently, intentionally, completely on purpose to shift. Are you going to write a letter to your congressperson? Are you going to have a conversation with that very nice Black friend of yours and say, I want to hear your story. This has to be impacting you. Let me hear your story. Instead of, well, let me tell you what happened to me. Or, oh yeah, I remember when I couldn't get an apartment. Yep, they didn't like the look of me. Listen, it's like this. Can I have a container to listen, to ground myself, and hear those difficult conversations that are painful? When we first moved to this area in 97, my children were very young. One of the first experiences we had was my husband being stopped, pushed up against a cop car in Canfield, and being detained with my kids in the car crying, what's happening to daddy? Well, he was Black driving through Canfield. So how many conversations are you willing to have? Are you willing to be uncomfortable for change? Will you take the challenge to do something? There's a list on the internet. It's 75 things that white people can do to fight injustice. We all need to fight injustice because it's been us for 400 years. But this isn't getting any better. Anytime we can just systematically continue to dehumanize people, that's going to spread. Do I feel a glimmer of hope? I do. I do. Because I see young, white, Black, brown, Asian, Puerto Rican people together, protesting, raising their voices, saying enough. And I hope all of those young people vote, speak out, ask for better policies, demand better policies, put their money where their mouth is, whether you're going to contribute to Black Lives Matters or to a bail fund to help get these young kids out of prison. Not the ones that were looting, but the ones that were out there for a right cause. So what are we willing to do? I want to share something that I wrote. For those of you that know me, you know I like to write. And so I wrote this while I was just watching the news, watching all of these cities burning. Let's see. Okay, constant heartbreak, systemic racism, Tamir Rice, sadness, grief, frustration, Breonna Taylor, righteous indignation, a simmering rage boiling over, too many murders of Black and brown lives, no justice, open season targets on the backs of sons and brothers, mothers and daughters, National Guard, tear gas, riot gear. We can't breathe. We can't breathe. No more. So think about what your way can be. What could be your own action? I still think about that man that was just jogging in his neighborhood and he was literally hunted. Think about how that would feel if someone that looked like you was hunted in that way. See if you can put yourself into that position of having a target on your back. What might that feel like? A sense of no covering, a sense of no safety. Breonna Taylor, she was in her house, she was in her bed. Police officers broke in her house, shot her. No questions. They didn't even identify that they were police officers. They shot her, killed her, murdered her in her home. So every time this happens, there's a heartbreak. There is a fear, and we have to do something different. We have to do something different, and these conversations make a difference.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. Examining your role in change. What can you do personally? Looking at your gifts. So yesterday I was at the bank, local bank in town, and I was talking to this very nice white gentleman. And by the second hour I was with him, I was like, well, he's like my cousin. Let me ask him how he's feeling about the murder of George Floyd. Mm-hmm. And he looked at me and his face got really beet red. And he said, I'm sad. He goes, I can't believe this happened? And I said, well, young man, I've been sitting with you for over an hour. It's like I can feel your good heart. I said, so what are you going to do about it? And he said, well, I took a class once in college on social justice, and I learned a lot about Gandhi and Martin Luther King. I said, so how are you using that information? How can you use that to impact change in a systemic way? And he said, I was thinking about doing a blog. I said, well, how about not think about it? How about be about it?
Mm-hmm.
I said, now I'm going to challenge you, young man. I said, I'm going to challenge you to do something and to talk to your family and friends, and that you all stand together and say no more, because we all are one humanity.
Mm-hmm.
We can't continue being two different Americas. You feel me, Jamie?
I do.
I know you do. I know you do. I know. And so examining our role in change, what can we do with the skill set that we have, and how can we step out of our comfort zone? Examining our own role in maintaining the status quo.
Mm-hmm.
Doing nothing is our complicity. So in how many instances do you say, oh, that's horrible, oh, I'm so sad, but you keep living life? That helps zero. That does not help. So it's going to take an action. And then the other piece is examining our own personal views.
Mm-hmm.
Ask yourself, what are my blind spots?
Mm-hmm.
What are my biases? What are the stereotypes that I need to challenge within myself? Who are the people that I'm afraid of? And why? Is that real? Was that fed to me by family, friends, society? Or did it come from a lived experience? So we have to question. You get to question your own biases and challenge it, and challenge it. Our prejudgments. And also ask yourself, can I be a compassionate listener? Can I be a real compassionate listener where I am a witness to someone else's challenge?
Mm-hmm.
Grounded, just like we grounded in the beginning. How can I be grounded and hold a good space to really be with someone? And looking at your true feelings, that feeling that you really don't even want to speak out loud in the air. Do you have some white guilt?
Yeah.
Do you have feelings of shame? I could have done something, I could have said something. Can you be with that, acknowledge that, and say, I can do something?
Mm-hmm.
This is how I felt. I can do something. I have many friends that have called me over the last few days, and they've said, I don't know what to say.
Mm-hmm.
So I appreciate your call, and I appreciate your care. Now, let me tell you something that you can do. And I've had other friends that have called me, and they said, you know what? Wherever you're at, you march, I'm marching with you. What are you doing? Where are you contributing? I'm going to do that. So there's been some great solidarity, and there's been a lot of silence too.
Mm-hmm.
People that I thought would call, because it's a grieving. And we talk about, we can talk about grief, but imagine every time you turn on the TV and you see a Black life that's lost. I'm grieving. I'm grieving. I am putting on my lipstick. I'm fluffing out my fro. I'm putting on my jacket, and I'm going to work doing my thing. And inside, I am in excruciating pain. When my husband doesn't even feel comfortable to walk the dog, I am in excruciating pain. When my Black son and my Black daughters leave the house and I'm afraid for their lives, I'm grieving. That's a grieving. And if we stay in a state of constant grieving, what happens? You all are brilliant. That means, we're staying, if we're grieving all the time, we're right in that point in the nervous system where it's just too much. Too much cortisol, too much inflammation, too much. And so then you say, well, what is this health disparity? Why do Black people have more diabetes and more hypertension and more heart disease? I hope you can answer that question now. Because there's a lot of brokenheartedness in our community. It's a lot of us. So, do you want to share anything, Dr. Jamie?
First of all, thank you for your vulnerability. I believe we only grow when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable with each other, realizing it may not always feel safe to do that for reasons that you well explained. I'm going to keep it personal and ask you a question, because you gave some very deep, actionable steps of what we as white folks can do here, what we as people can do. I mean, I think regardless of your race or ethnic background, we can do our part to enact policy change, to speak out. What would you like to see me in a position that I'm in leadership, my privilege? What would you like to see me do better?
Wow. That's
or differently. I don't know how to best word the question.
Yeah. I believe making trainings, I mean, you do beautiful trainings, and that work is such healing work. So maybe having sessions where people can join in for more healing space, a healing space, you offer that. And then also bringing in that piece into your trainings about diversity. You do a good job of that, continuing to do more. And this, this dialogue, this opportunity for me to share about things that are typically challenging to talk about. So I would say continuing to cross that invisible line, continuing to do that. Yeah. And I'm gonna sit with that some more. I'm gonna come up with something else. Yeah.
So here's my honest reflection. I grew up in a very white conservative background. I won't get into the details of it other than to say all of the hate rhetoric that's being thrown out there, I heard it personally. I know exactly what a lot of the folks I grew up with are saying right now. And I am not perfect. I am far from perfect, which is why I always want to learn how to do better. But I want to speak to the reality here that hearts and minds can be changed.
Yes.
Because if I stayed the path of what I was raised with, a lot of bad things would have happened, but that's for another day. And I'll share honestly that a lot of my hesitancy in speaking out over the years has been this fear of losing my family connections.
Yep. Of course.
Because I do think that's what a lot of us face. And with every year of strength I gain in healing and recovery, I care less and less about that and care more and more about doing what's right and what I know the God of my understanding expects of me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I owe that to people like you and others that I've met all along my journey from high school on, who have shown me your humanity, because that's not what a lot of conservative power structures want me to see.
Right, right. I appreciate, breathe some more. I appreciate so much you saying that, because the conversation around the dinner table is where people learn the hate. Okay. And many people continue to plant those seeds of hate. And the people like you that have been in a position to have another type of breeze come into their life so that they are not entrenched in what they grew up in.
Mm-hmm.
That's the hope. I definitely believe in change and transformation, or I wouldn't do what I do.
Mm-hmm.
I believe in change and transformation.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know it's possible. We've been in this for 400 years.
Right.
But in this now moment, I have to believe inside of me that is pivotal.
Mm-hmm.
That we can pivot, that we can shift.
Mm-hmm.
And more people need to understand that when we can see the humanity in everyone, we can see the humanity in ourselves clear. That we can see ourselves for the beautiful souls that we are.
Mm-hmm.
But when we see someone else as half human, when we dehumanize people, we're walking around with a heart that's on half full.
Mm-hmm.
I was on the computer yesterday and saw the George Floyd challenge, where these young white boys were one filming, one with a knee on their friend's neck, reenacting the murder of George Floyd, laughing, picture after picture, the George Floyd challenge. So I feel like I know what their dinner table looks like.
Yeah.
I feel like I know. And that is disgusting and horrific. I couldn't sleep until about 3:30 this morning. We know that's part of the trauma response, right?
For sure.
Yeah, yeah. But you sharing your story, saying, yeah, I heard the N word. I know what they're saying. And yeah, I was afraid that I'll be disowned by the family if I say no, no. So be as courageous as you have been able to be.
Right.
Keep modeling that. Keep modeling that.
Yeah.
And showing people that you can speak truth to light and still be loved and not lose it all, but gain it all. So one of my teachers from India, she knew I was going to have this conversation today, and I was, I was sending, WhatsApp with her, just like I am, just like, I'm so frustrated. I'm so, and she was like, you know what, Kellie, talking is not going to change it. Conversation is not going to change it. Share your practices of love and peace. And I said, I'm going to share that. And I'm also I'm going to challenge people.
Yeah.
To do something different than they've ever done. So to have those courageous conversations with family and with friends and bust out of the status quo and say, enough for that. Enough. Have you sat down and talked to a Black person? Have you walked side by side with a person of color? Guess what? They're human and beautiful, and they don't bark like the stories I heard. It's those challenges, because we're tired and we should all be tired. Yes. I'm outraged and we should all be outraged.
Yes. And what you just described to me is the heart of yoga, which is taking your practice off the mat.
Yep.
That's what you're doing here today, and you're issuing challenge, because nobody grows without being challenged.
Oh, yeah.
It's a precept of recovery. If you're looking at it from the addiction recovery angle, that we can validate and we can talk and we can share posts, and that's good. But I really love what you said about how are you going to get uncomfortable? I think that's the least any of us can do who really want to make some change here.
Right. And to just even take a moment right now and perhaps visualize yourself sitting in front of that person that is the other. Sitting in front of that person, that I am seated with you, and I want to learn. I want to hear. I want to see you clearer. And we won't be decimated. We won't spontaneously combust. We might feel a heat inside. We might even feel some heartburn. Palms might sweat. What am I doing? I might be rejected. Oh, I feel so raw. Oh. But the fruit that can come from those interactions is priceless.
Yes.
This is priceless, because I'm tired. Yeah. I'm exhausted. Yeah. Being Black in America is exhausting. It is flipping exhausting.
Yes.
And back in the 80s, I used to live in Spain, and a friend of mine, when I was about to come home, he was like, why are you going back to the US? They don't even like you there.
Yeah.
They don't even like you there. I was like, I know, but that's where I live. I'm going on back. So let's be the change.
Yeah.
Let's be the change.
May I ask one question?
Of course.
Because this is a question I have on my heart, and I know a lot of whites desiring to be better allies have this on our hearts too. Because I've heard a lot of the messages, especially that have been shared on social media, about stop asking your Black friends to educate you about racism. And I can appreciate where that would be exhausting.
It's exhausting, girl.
Yeah. Yet, Kellie, I've also come into situations in my life where I really feel like there's something I might want to talk out with you, or Mama Melita, or something like that. And I mean, I'll just use a very brief example. Last year, I was in a traffic accident with a Black motorist, and I still second guess myself about how I handled things with the cops. And and we can have this conversation off camera if you're willing, but that was a situation where I desperately wanted to talk out everything with one of my Black friends. And I don't know if it was white guilt that stopped me, or if it was, I don't want to exhaust them even further. So I don't know if you made sense of that question, but I think a lot of us are wanting to know that right now.
Yeah.
Especially since we're talking about having dialogue. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because it's important to check in with someone to say, I have this issue. It deals with race, and I would love to talk to you about it. How are you feeling? Do you have the bandwidth for it? Do you have a cup for it today? Because this is what I do. This is what I do. I'm a teacher. My dissertation was on multiculturalism and diversity. This is what I do. Do I get tired? Yeah. So if I'm in deep grief, I don't want you calling me talking about your white guilt. I don't want to hear it. I don't have the bandwidth for it. But if you could say, this is on my mind. Can we revisit this? Can we talk about this? How are you doing? Like, you know what? Yeah, why don't we have some tea tomorrow? Or girl, I just do not have anything for you right now.
Yeah.
You know? So it's having that relationship, right? It's like I call my best friend Jackie and say, do you have 5 minutes to listen to me talk about X, Y, and Z? And she might be like, I got 5 minutes for you tomorrow. Right now I can't. But yeah, because we have to be able to ask.
Yeah.
We have to be able to ask. I have many friends that say, I asked once before, teach me about your culture, and I got shot down and said, I don't have time to teach you about my culture. I said, so that was one person.
Yeah.
And you felt crappy after that experience, and I get that. But some people will have the capacity and the moment. Do we always want to go to the chalkboard? No.
I relate to that.
Right? You don't always want to go to the chalkboard. It's just like, well, I just cannot. I don't have anything for you. And we have to be comfortable enough to say that. I always say, what do you have the energy and the desire to engage in? Because growing up, where the majority of the spaces that I was in, I was the only Black person. Oh, well, Kellie's the expert. Yeah, Kellie's the expert on her experience, period. Right. So don't make me the mouthpiece. But can we sit down and have a conversation when my energy is there and I'm feeling it, and you have respectfully engaged with me? Let's talk. Let's have real talk. Yeah, absolutely. So anytime you want to revisit something,
thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for answering that question, because I do think that's what's on a lot of our minds right now. And I want to say very clearly, I would not be where I'm at today compared to where I came from, as I gave you all a little bit of a glimpse into that, if people of color and other religions were not vulnerable with me. That having these conversations in doses, granted, has been how I've learned. And so I do think the conversation is a valuable learning tool, while also, as you just beautifully articulated, respecting the grief.
And I appreciate that question, because many of my white friends have said, I feel uncomfortable asking the question. I feel like it's a silly question. I feel guilty. I feel like, no question is a silly question if you don't have the answer to it. You can't know my experience unless we have a dialogue about it. And we can have dialogues when we build relationships.
Right.
And we build relationships when we take a pause and we let ourselves come together, as opposed to being afraid of the stories that we've heard and seen on TV, living in the stereotypes that are in the soil of this country. Now, racism has been such an overarching umbrella on the lives of Black and brown people. I remember being 4 years old and Uncle John was going to a protest, Black nationalists in Cleveland. He never came back. So that was my first conversation about what happened to Uncle John. Died protesting for our rights so that we can be free, so that we could be more than 3/5 of a person. We're still not there. So these conversations are critical. So you're using your privilege. So that's Dr. Marich using her privilege. So the privilege is more than just being able to not have those conversations about how to keep your kids alive, or the privilege of being able to go into the CVS and get some Band-Aids that are flesh colored.
Yeah.
You know? So thank you for using your privilege and your power for good in the world, and for being courageous enough to forge those relationships, to have ears to hear people from other cultures. So perhaps that's a project that we'll embark on. Yeah.
Let's have that tea.
Yeah.
And talk about it. Because yes, I'm feeling so many things I can't quite put words to, which is usually a sign that I need to sit and reflect and then take action based on that reflection. Just want to thank you with the full and open heart for your willingness to do this. Again, anytime we're vulnerable, especially in a public platform, it's both a risk, but a reward, I feel. That's been my experience anyway. And I just looking at some of the comments that we've got, and there's just a lot of appreciation for what you've shared and eliciting a lot of thinking. As we close, is there anything else you want to add, at least today, that maybe hasn't been said already?
I simply want to reiterate the call to action, policy change, starting with the police, starting with our elected officials, that we need to change policies. That's the only way things are going to shift. So keep praying, keep meditating, keep dancing, keep showing up, and also work for that policy change. Donate to Black Lives Matter, donate to the bail funds, and keep your hearts wide open.
And Kellie, if you wouldn't mind giving a plug, where can people find you online? Because I have a lot of comments here. I'm a new Dr. Kellie fan, and you're a beautiful writer and an artist and a clinician. So if people wanted to connect with you further, how can they do that?
They can, I have a website that I've neglected for a while. It's Creative Wellness Solutions, www.drkelliek.com. So that's drkelliek.com. And I can also be reached at my email, which is redundant. It's drkelliek@gmail.com. Yeah.
Wonderful. Kellie's a beautiful writer and a poet, and I know there's information about her writing projects on the page. And again, Kellie, I call Kellie Tia because she's like an aunt to me. I have a big surrogate family in our community.
Love it.
And I just thank you very, very much for your presence here today. I love you.
I love you too. Thank you so much.